Mr. James Scarlett, how are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm doing good. Glad to have you on. I've been trying to get you here for 3 weeks, a month maybe now.
Yeah. I've not been avoiding you. I genuinely haven't been avoiding you.
See, what happened is you already had a podcast lined up with Renfrey from Riot Act for your ATG TV, and
yeah,
talk to you for 2 hours. For 2 hours.
Me and him can talk.
left me with scraps because the whole point of me trying to do these things is maybe get a bit of fresh chat, so not just go over the old ground. But by the time I was done, there was nothing. There was no meat left in the bones, man. He's went to town on it.
He went quite deep, didn't he?
He went quite deep. So I've tried my best. So let's get started with Refused at Trees 2016. Now, you're known, you've got a reputation for being very good at booking lineups that have a lot of women involved, and as many women as you can out. I had a podcast with Serena from Svalbard, and she called it unforced gender balancing, and name-dropped both your events. So the background to that is you book Refused. I know what Refused charged because I asked myself. It was a ridiculous fee, and you're the only person in the UK daft enough to pay it. So they come to your event and then trot out the same speech that do every event, basically calling you a sexist pig. So tell me about that experience for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, so one of my favourite bands, which I think is important to note. So I've gone a bit. I'm sure you do this at Damnation. Sometimes you get a bit Johnny Big Bollocks, and you go up there with your mates and show off a little bit. So I've said to my mates who are into Refuse, like the ones that I know are excited, we'll go and watch it on the side of the stage. And I knew that the last song they would play would be New Noise. It would be amazing. So I was like, right, 3 songs to go. Let's all go up. So I've taken like 10 of my mates up there, and they're just getting ready for New Noise. And then he launches into this just tirade, which is basically, there's no 2 ways about it. It's directed personally at me because I booked the lineup. And all my mates are like looking at me like, Jesus. And basically what he said is, there aren't enough women on this festival. And he started making, as you said, he says it at every gig. He started saying, next year I want it to be 25%, and the year after I want it to be 50%. And it was all like very like rabble-rousing, supposedly crowd-pleasing thing to say. But actually, as you said, people like Serena have always been very, very nice about 2000 Trees and ArcTanGent, and how I think we have supported women in the rock world in more so than other festivals have, more so than certainly some of the big rock festivals have. So it was really, I was like, when he started going, I honestly couldn't believe it. I felt like everyone was looking at me.
Did you know about the speech before? Because I've heard it 3 or 4 times, so I've started to get a wee bit jaded with it, because it's the same speech regardless of whether you're playing. Now, to give some context to this, I went back and looked at your lineup, and I don't know an awful lot of these bands, but that year you had Creeper, Milk Teeth, Black Honey, Hey Hello, Itch, Yuck, She Makes War, Happy Accidents, Munchie Girls. Yeah, I mean, these bands weren't playing, but they're like your house bands. Roll Tomasi, you're a big supporter of Brutus. You've had Svalbard. You'd rip somebody's arm off to get Julie Christmas to play. I mean, there was no doubt that the events you put on, when women are available in bands, they play if they match the lineup. So, were you aware of that speech before he gave it?
No, I wasn't, and I hadn't seen them. I don't think I'd seen them on their Reformation tour. So, no, I really didn't know. And I think it's a really difficult topic to talk about if you're a white male, like diversity.
Yeah.
Because of course I think I'm not sexist, and of course I think I'm not racist, and of course I think I'm like fair to all all types of people across the broad spectrum of the world. But I'm open for people to criticise me if they've actually thought through what they're saying.
Yeah.
Now, I think if I lie in bed at night and think about it, I'm only booking bands based on whether they're good or not. And to be fair to even someone like Andy Copping, now I'm not known for being fair to Download very often, but even I went to a talk with him at a university, and he said, look, at the end of the day, I want to sell tickets. That's my job. And I think he said if Paramore were available, he would book them, but they weren't available. So he booked, I don't know, Biffy Clyro, Iron Maiden. At the end of the day, we all, you, me, Andy Copping, the only reason we're still here after 15 years or whatever is because we sell tickets, and we book the bands to put, bums on seats at the end of the day. Rolo Tomasi, or if you book Rolo Tomasi at ArcTanGent, people are really happy. I'm not going, oh, look at me, aren't I great? I've booked a band with one woman in it. I'm like, this is great. Rolo Tomasi are a brilliant band, and loads of people want to come and see him.
Yeah, and then he got caned for it because he made that comment about girls picking up the guitars, which offended Serena as well, to be fair, and she seems like quite a reasonable person when it comes to this argument. However, you get the people that are out there just wanting to beat you with a stick no matter what the topic is, and he was getting some bizarre stuff coming back saying, oh, you're saying that, but why don't you drop Mastodon and book Kitty? I said, well, because I want there to be a festival next year. That's why, it's like, Kitty, I'm not selling you any tickets, mate. I will sell you some, but I'm certainly not going to sell you Mastodon amounts of tickets. So it's right, but that's every time I think, because you're such a pleasant guy as well, and you clearly aren't sexist, and you're not looking at your lineups. But the idea of you sitting up with your buddies, confused. After the stupid fee you had to pay to get them over, they never even sold it. The Glasgow Garage, and they're getting like proper headline fees, and then they come up and then they kick you in the teeth.
You can imagine some promoters would have had him round the throat after that, but it's not really my vibe, to be honest. But
see, to be honest, if he'd actually looked into it a wee bit and hadn't just done it for his sort of, what do the kids call it, virtue signalling, if he hadn't just done that and he actually looked into the lineup and then he'd done it, it may have been a wee bit more offensive, but it's the fact that no matter where he played, at any gig. And it's a bit like, the band with the 4 male members. You know what I mean? We should just no book you and get the band with women in it, and then ditch Refused and a ridiculous price tag. So
yeah, absolutely. It felt like a real shame, because when you think, you convince yourself a band are really intelligent and they write intelligent, they're like thinkers. Bands like Refused and Rage Against the Machine, they're like, you think they're thinkers. This isn't me criticising Rage, but just as an example. And then they say something like that, and you think it's actually just sloganeering. There's no thinking gone into that at all.
Yes. It's that. I've been in that position, not quite being dubbed a sexist, but I had Napalm Death headline one year. And I'm watching Napalm Death, enjoying the gig like everybody would, normal Napalm Death's great set. And halfway through, Barney launches into this chat about the banner behind them. It was a Jägermeister banner, and it was a shambles, and having to play in front of this nonsense. He never brought up he never mentioned the banner to me. It was like, he could have had the Napalm Death banner up when the headline band, they could do whatever the hell they want, but he just launched it, and it was like, it felt like a personal attack on me that I'd somehow said, no, commercialism over Napalm Death, and you guys need to play in front of this big branded logo. It was never the case, and you just think, it's bizarre how they can... It's bizarre how they can turn on you like that, or maybe they don't register it. It's just about they know the fans are going to like the gist of that conversation.
Yeah.
So
that's one of the reasons I don't nowadays often meet the bands, because you like go and introduce yourself, and then they'll launch into something they didn't get, or that hasn't been done, or some fuck up that's happened during the day.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was just coming to fanboy you and like say hello, and you've made me feel stressed now. So yeah.
Yes. No, and I'm very much, I've said that a few times in this podcast, I don't go and meet the bands for that reason, because even when I was talking to Tom Begley, and he said it's the same with Tour Imagine, even when nothing's really wrong, they'll still find something for you. They need another bag of ice, they want a pizza, they want, it's just like, it's exhausting, so you're best just hiding and hoping your event goes well.
Absolutely.
Right, let's talk about I can't do this even if I'm copying what Renfrey's asked you, but that fundraiser, it was phenomenal. the idea when ArcTanGent first said about the fundraiser, I know you done one with 2,000 trees, but I paid money towards the ArcTanGent one, and it was the one I was investing, so I go every single year. And when it first, I don't know, did you ask for, is it 30 grand or 40 grand to start with?
Yeah, 30, I think.
30, and I was like, that's a push. I mean, it's like, trying to get £30,000. Don't get me wrong, the things we were offering were fantastic. The burritos for life and side stage and all that kind of jazz. But it's like 30, but you end up with 100 grand in the end. What was your thinking as that was happening?
I mean, the craziest bit of the ArcTanGent one is that the last like 50 grand came right at the end. It was like some weird snowball that suddenly dropped off the cliff, and I don't know. I mean, it's a weird thing because we'd never, until COVID happened, we'd never even considered doing a crowdfunder. It just never felt like we've got a solid business that runs every year, pays for itself. We don't have any outside investment. We're like the festivals are owned and run by me and my friends. And yeah, so to suddenly have to ask for money is weird, but what an incredible reaction. I mean, we raised 120,000 at 2,000 trees and 100,000 at ArcTanGent. It's just bonkers.
And that, I mean, because it's easy for me to be here and be like, oh, but a fundraiser info, because I'm indoor small event, you guys are, you usually get careers, but this is what you do for a living, isn't it? You mean you book all these bands for a living, these festivals are your income for the year. So when I posted in Damnation, our Facebook page, to say that I was coming on to you, a few folk had mentioned, well, is ArcTanGent now safe? Are you guys, did you get what you needed to secure the future of the festival?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, only with the caveat that we don't know how long COVID's going to go on for, but so yeah, we've certainly, it got us through to 2021 because it's hard for people to imagine, I think, but because they only see the 3 days in the field every August, but we've got 2 full-time employees, 3 full-time directors, like I'm one of them, and you know, it's all the 6 months worth of Facebook advertising we spent, and you know, web hosting and all sorts of, we got people running our press, and you know, there's a lot of money been going out the door to get ready for 2020. Yeah. And we were blissfully unaware let's say in February, we're just spending money like you would normally in a year, because it was just a normal year, and then suddenly it's like it's not a normal year anymore, but that money's never coming back. So yeah, it was really scary the first 2 months of sort of March and April, just not really knowing what the world was going to look like or the festival finances. But yeah, it's those people have definitely saved their festival that they love going to. So
yeah, I mean, I don't want to dwell too much in the pandemic, because I feel like it's been battered, and also it's pretty depressing, and no one's really got that answer of, well, when are we coming at the other side? So like sitting here and pretending that we know is it just gets frustrating as well. However, you're in an unusual situation where not only do you lose one festival, you lose 2. I mean, I take it that was 2 rabbit punches for you then.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really weird summer of like Groundhog Day, because we postponed one festival, and then 2 weeks later postponed the other, and then we did a crowdfunder for one, a crowdfunder for the other, and then it was like we did those online ATG TV, and we did one for 2,000 trees as well, and all these things we've never done before. So it's like it's quite a big learning curve this summer. But yeah, it was a double hit, and like you say, it's my full-time job. Well, more than 90% of my income comes from the 2 festivals. So
yeah, and great festivals. I mean, they're so well regarded. It's they don't have that sort of hollow commercial feel to them. I mean, it is you guys built from the ground up. So I mean, it's not just losing a gig, some sort of copy and paste gig for somewhere. It's it's your work. In terms of the fundraiser, now, I'm drinking these White Russians tonight in your honour and ArcTanGent's honour, but you know, these are £8 a go at ArcTanGent when you get the doubles, and they're horrible. I don't know why I sit and drink these all weekend, Alex. This is difficult to drink. So
I mean, yeah, it's a lot of milk, isn't it? It's a lot of milk to drink. I'm afraid I'm on the wagon at the moment. Otherwise, for the next 3 weeks, I've decided.
Sorry.
Otherwise, I'll be drinking one with you. But yeah, they're not nice. I agree.
They're not. I don't know. I drink them one weekend a year. I don't know why that's become the thing. I go
It's not.
By the way,
It started as The Big Lebowski.
yeah.
You seen that film? I guess when we started 2000 Trees, we were just obsessed with that film. So we wanted White Russians on the bar, and then it's never gone away.
It just becomes a tradition now. You go to the bar at ArcTanGent, and when the few times I've been to 2000 Trees, and you don't even think about, I have a White Russian, and now it's a double White Russian, and next thing you know, you're 10 of them in. So I've got a £300 bar tab for ArcTanGent next year through the fundraiser. And that doesn't actually get you very far at ArcTanGent when you're drinking. When you're drinking.
Although that's a lot. That is a lot of milk. It might not get you drunk, but it's going to get you lots of calcium.
For next year, I think I'm going to try and just and get back onto the pints like I should be doing. Now, the big factor or the big feature of that fundraiser was the band. Now, me knowing you, I assumed that the band was Mogwai. And then when it came out and it said, then everybody started, no, it's obviously the Mars Volta. And then, no, it's obviously Mogwai. And it's like, you must be the only festival with that one D band's actually two bands. Now,
yeah.
I suppose you would be delighted to get either. And from the conversation that you had for ATG TV, it was clear that the band is the Mars Volta and not Mogwai, as I thought. But you're still in the same position. I mean, that you could have raised 500 grand. I mean, ultimately the band either needs to be together or they need to say yes to come and play. So for whatever you can tell us or tell the fans, how is the conversations with both those bands?
Well, I mean, with Mogwai, if anyone wants to go and speak to Mogwai on my behalf, we'd love them to play at ArcTanGent, and they're not interested in the slightest, as far as I can see. And I've tried every single year for the last 8 years. I feel like if I could sit in a room with the members of Mogwai, or take the members of Mogwai to ArcTanGent and show them what it was, I think they probably would be interested. That sounds a bit egotistical, but I get what you mean. But they're like, the devotion that they would get there would far surpass what they would get at some indie festival. Or I saw them at Primavera a few years ago in Barcelona, and it's not the same. I just don't think you can play to a bigger crowd somewhere else. They could play Reading, for instance, to a bigger crowd, but I think what they would get at ArcTanGent would be special. But I don't think the weird thing about post-rock is post-rock bands don't want to be called post-rock, do they? No. It's just ridiculous. No. It's like, I've written a power metal album, but I don't want to be called power metal. Well, you either are or you aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, Mogwai are a post-rock band, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The problem with them as well, it's like what you're saying about the major festival. Teen in the Park was Scotland's festival. I mean, that was our Glastonbury, and Mogwai headlined a tent. I mean, the tent would have been, 15, maybe 20,000 deep, and it was lucky if there was 900 people there. Blur were playing at the same time, but it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing that Mogwai, a Glasgow band, were playing Teen in the Park.
Really?
And nobody, and that's what's strange about it as well, because they're not. Okay, the book to play the Hydro, which is our 13,000 capacity, and I don't know if they sold it out or not, probably didn't. But before that, they were really a Barrowlands band. The Barrowlands was where Mastodon or Opeth or any of these bands that you book left, right and centre, some of the bands you book are much bigger than that. And I don't see them being a band that looking at ArcTanGent think that's too small for us. I don't know if it's just not reaching our radar. I mean, are you getting any feedback at all about booking them? Or
it's like they're not available. Mate, I'm not talking numbers here, but I made an offer which is double what I've paid anyone else ever at ArcTanGent.
Yeah.
And they just were not, it wasn't, oh, we'll consider it, we'll think about it. It was just no. Now, I don't even know if the band ever hear about it or not. You know, in the music industry, it's not. There's a number of gatekeepers, aren't there? And you've got to go through the booking agent. So who knows?
But at this point, I mean, it's like those guys are in place to make sure that the nonsense doesn't get to the bands. I mean, what you're talking about is not nonsense, and the ArcTanGent would never be considered. I consider them the other things they've played. I mean, they played a car park in Glasgow 5-6 years ago. Just they done was it the Zidane soundtrack in a car park? I mean, I don't know, 900 people or 1,000 people could go. They don't strike me as the kind of band that are would be that motivated by just the money, or else they would be in some huge label and on these money-making tours. I mean, there's a town next to Glasgow called Paisley, and they played the town hall, I don't know, about 8 years ago, and that only takes about 1,000 people as well. So I hope it's just one of these things as a communication breakdown or whatever, and you're going to get lucky one day and they're just going to come through and be like, boom, there's your dinner, we'll come and play it. And in terms of the Mars Volta, so that's a bit more difficult because are they even a thing at the moment?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that will happen one day.
Yeah, I
really do. I honestly think it will happen. And we wanted to bring that to people for this year, but COVID has put the brakes. I mean, I don't know when this is going out, but next week we're doing we're announcing 120 bands next week for ArcTanGent.
Right. When are you announcing? Because I was probably thinking about Tuesday, but I can make that sooner if it's going to be. Are we going?
Well, that's. I mean, yeah, they start on Monday. It starts on Monday.
Right. Okay.
But whatever's good for you. But I don't know what my point was now, but.
You're saying COVID, the Mars.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So people will see the lineup. I'm really, really stoked for it. But there are some bands from last year who are not on this year's lineup, and that is because of COVID. Because particularly, I don't know if you found this with Damnation, but American bands, some of them are very much like, no, we're just not thinking about anything. We've got Donald Trump and an election coming, and COVID. And they just don't know what the world's going to look like. Their borders are basically closed at the moment. So a lot of American bands have got cold feet. I'm not saying that's the case with the Mars Volta, but it's been quite challenging to book American bands. Now, there are some American bands on our lineup, but a couple of the ones we booked previously are not coming back.
Yeah, I mean, what we'll do, this will be Monday then. So James and I are talking, that is now Monday, okay? I got an email the other day from an agent, actually, from a European band, and the agent basically asked, well, what's going to be the situation post-Brexit? I mean, forget COVID. I mean, Brexit seems to have been forgotten about in the mix of the world going to shit. So I picked this band. The band's, I don't know, say £600-700. They're not a massive band, but if you put visas into this, it's a deal. It collapses the deal for their side, or it collapses the deal for my side, because now that band is now double the price because I need to go and get 5 or 6 visas for them to come in and do one show. It makes no financial sense to empty. And then when I was looking at the lineup, like, well, that's pretty much everyone. So, I mean, how have you guys are a bit better organised than I am? Have you given thought to post-Brexit and if we all need to start getting visas for next year?
Well, I think there was that article which I think scared the hell out of everyone about how much visas were going to cost. And I think it's turned out that people had misinterpreted that. I'm not an expert on it, but I don't think visas are going to be anywhere near as expensive as they would have been.
Right.
And between me and you, I try to let the bands deal with their visas rather than me dealing with their visas.
Yes.
Because that's a nightmare logistical exercise. You spell one name wrong, and the visa you can't get in the country. So yeah, I'd leave that to the bands. But I don't think it's going to be. I mean, I hate the idea of Brexit as much as the next man, but I don't actually think that's going to
be too much. I think I suppose you don't know for certain, but I'm kind of working on the same basis that no, I mean the whole music industry is not going to collapse in a day, is it? And I've got too much other shit to be worrying about just now. Never mind what's happening next year with visas.
Yeah, I mean, if the music industry is going to collapse, it's not going to be Brexit that's going to take it down. I'm afraid it's going to be COVID.
Yeah.
I worry about, like, I don't know, tour bus companies and staging companies and fencing companies and tour managers, and whether all these people can actually, how long they can all survive, or even booking agents. There's not been much government support for the kind of music industry or festival industry at all, really.
No, there hasn't. And I was making that point. I mean, right from the very start, I've been quite vocal about support this podcast. It doesn't have any sponsors. I'm not wanting to make any money for it, so just kind of put a name to it, like we make events and save our venues, and if it gets out a few thousand people that, then great. And I was talking to Luke Bell, as you said you were listening to before you came on, and he's gone about the cruise from across the world of 55 people involved with Red Hot Chili Peppers, and even losing a handful of the guys, he's like, the guys are there for a reason. I mean, they're the top of their game. They get brought in for Australia or Germany or whatever because they're that good. And you're totally right. When the dominoes start to fall, I mean, where do you get these guys? And then that feeds through to the performances. And then the fans are getting a shittier version of that band. Not because the band members are still up on stage, but their sound guys know the guy they wanted, the lighting guys know the guy they could get. It's quite depressing. But I mean, what can you do? I mean, all you can do is try and shine some light in it and support it where you can.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's just got to work out how they personally get to the other side of this, how they get their businesses and their, the individuals get to the other side. And I know a lot of people that are doing jobs at the moment that aren't the jobs that they're trained to do. And it will come back. Let's face it. I know you're a big festival goer. We've seen each other at in many a field and venue over the years, and I am too. And what do you want to do the most when this passes? It's like go to a music festival, isn't it? Like I want to go to Roadburn, I want to go to Download, I want to go to Primavera, and that's
Damnation.
what everyone would
You want to go to Damnation?
Oh mate, well you don't want to hear this probably, but I was really counting on Damnation. I kept saying to my mates, okay, we've lost the summer, but I can feel it. November,
we can get something.
It's going to happen, and then it's like, no.
Vicky from Bloodstock said the same thing. It became a whole new pressure for this wee event at the end of the summer. I mean, I think the guest list would have been deeper than the actual the ticket buyers. So
yeah, you'd have had your house up against a load of £100 British bands headlining, and then 3,000 guest list in a room. It'd be brilliant.
And honestly, I'd have done anything that would have taken. I mean, I felt there was plenty of British bands. If it was a case of no one could get in, no one could get out. But restrictions had been lifted enough to maybe do 1,000, 1,500 capacity. We were prepared to do that. I thought we could turn that around quite quickly. There's plenty of good bands in the UK. But I mean, look at us, fuck's sake, look at us now. We're heading into October and places. I mean, I'm not allowed to go into someone's house now, and they're not allowed to come into my house. So it's definitely getting worse before it gets better. Anyway, let's not be miserable. This is a fun time podcast. So tell me about the good old times. And I had an experience when Damnation done really well in 2008. I had 4,000 fans there. Then I went off and I started Death Fest. And in my head, I'm like, well, I've just done a festival for 4,000 fans. I mean, if I can get 2,000 of them to just come across, same sort of fan base, Bob's your auntie. This is an easy game. It turns out that's not true. They don't just follow you to your next event, and you need to start building it up for the ground again. Now you've done that in a much larger scale. You went for Trees and then started ArcTanGent. So how was, not why you did it? People know why you did it. You wanted to promote a different type of music, more ArcTanGent and less sort of 2000 Trees. But how did you find it when you take something that was pretty successful and then try to build it from the ground up again?
Well, I mean, it was easier than starting 2000 Trees in the sense that we knew what we were doing. I mean, as I've probably talked about in other places, we were complete amateurs when we started 2000 Trees. And like 7 years ago when we started ArcTanGent, I feel like we knew how to put on a good outdoor festival. We knew how to book the bands. We understood how all the industry worked and all that stuff. But that didn't actually, if you're not going to cut corners, because when we first started 2000 Trees, we're cutting corners left, right, and centre because we didn't actually know some of the things we didn't do.
Yeah,
we didn't know we were supposed to do, so we were just like blissfully ignorant, like with like all sorts of things that are unsafe, and agents saying to you, "Where's my rider?" and us being like, "What's a rider?" So it was like proper amateurism, but it makes it cheaper. So to actually year one at ArcTanGent was really tough because we were trying to run a really professional show like we did at 2000 Trees, but with a much less people, so much lower income. We didn't really make any money, hardly at all, for about 5 years at ArcTanGent. you know, it was really getting to the point where you're like, oh my God, I spent all year slogging my guts out.
Yeah.
And it was like the three organisers were barely getting paid, not really getting paid at all.
Yeah, I mean, was there a discussion between you, Si, and Jock, are the three organisers for ArcTanGent? I mean, tell the listener, I know what you do, but tell the listeners how's but you book the bands. What else do you do, and what do the other Si and Jock do?
So I'm at both festivals. I'm kind of the I guess the sort of coordinator. So I'm the one who runs we've got a massive jobs list that's got everything on it, from like book the stage, book the toilets, to write the risk assessment and all sorts. So I kind of coordinate that. I also I've got a background, believe it or not, in accountancy. So I do all the finances and the budgeting and all of that stuff. And then I also look after some of the production, so sound and lighting and staging and marquees. So yeah, and booking the bands is the bit that I really, really love, and that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. So yeah, and Si's got a very wide role, but his most important role is that he's in charge of the sales, the tickets, and all that kind of social media-y type stuff.
Yep.
And Jock's more on the creative side, so site decoration and like designing the merch and doing the website and things like that. So it's quite we've got a good mix of skills, I think.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it comes across very well from a guy who's been to every one of the events and just how it looks. And even when I was going through your social media channels today to get ready to talk to you and going back through in both websites, 2000 Trees and ArcTanGent, it's all very polished. It's all very slick, and I think when people see that, it's encouraging. You know, when you're going to an event, you don't feel like it's kind of event that's going to collapse. I mean, even with COVID, it never crossed my mind that 2000 Trees or ArcTanGent wouldn't survive, you know, because you're that kind of outfit that kind of knows how to run things. How are the guys? He says I'm not talking to those guys. How are Si and Jock?
Yeah, they're good. They're good. I think, you know, that much like me, the first couple of months was pretty stressful. But yeah, they're. We're all just all guns blazing for next year now, really. I'm not letting any sort of negativity about COVID cloud the fact that we need to be ready to run a festival next year, and it does take a year. It does take us a year to do it. So there's no like sitting and waiting to find out. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen. It's like we will be ready. We will be ready. When you just one quick thing. I was just listening to the previous podcast you did with Luke, and he was talking about the production, which I found fascinating, because he was saying basically production and like facilities and stuff backstage in the UK is shit, and it's really good in Europe, and it's definitely true. I mean, it's 100% true, and it's not because the UK festivals are stingy. It's because it's really expensive here. I think we haven't got any government. We haven't got any government funding. And it's just mega expensive. So we put on the most professional show we can, but we'd like to do more. I'd like to do Hellfest. I'd like to do a Hellfest production.
Everyone's, I think everyone's goal, especially outdoors, is to be a Hellfest. They seem to have the advantage. Well, whatever funding comes in for the government, they own that land, so they just build. They just build it's a theatre, and they put stuff in it. And it's like, we don't need to take this down in 4 days. We'll build a statue of Lemmy, and it'll be there for the next 20 years. And I mean, you see it when you get there. I mean, it's non-comparable to. I mean, I'm not even just the major UK festivals, but anywhere in Europe, when you go to those festivals, they don't have a site layout like Hellfest does. I mean, I really do think it is the best festival on the planet, because it gives you that added experience that you can just go and enjoy yourself and go to the fucking oyster bar or whatever that's been there and built, which is great. And it was interesting when Luke said that. You could tell his frustration with it, but I mean, again, because it's his hometown festivals, you know, he's coming back and he's bringing these bands, and then it's just a bit like, oh fuck, here we go, we're going into the UK now. We need to, I mean, having to fight for meal tokens and download this.
I loved his honesty. That's amazing. Guarantee those meal tokens are being changed as we speak.
You see, when you're the production coordinator for Florence and the Machine and Red Hot Chili Peppers, I suppose you're able to have that honesty because I mean you're set. You know, if you're going to deal with those bands, and he is that kind of guy. It was a great chat because he's not the kind of guy he doesn't boast about anything. So he's been in the industry for 17 years and you barely know it because unless you saw him on tour, he would never tell you. So I think the reaction it has, considering everyone I've had in the podcast has been attached to a festival or a band and they had a platform to put it out. I only put his out yesterday and it's I think it's the third top downloaded so far just because he had so many people like him that like fucking Luke Bell's talking about something. So it was a great chat. It was quite funny as well considering to some. Have you got too many he's talking about me buying the tour buses?
No, I'm about 2/3 of the way through.
Oh, well, that's at the end. That's at the end when he's absolutely.
He mentions the tour buses, but
he basically told me not to do it, and I went ahead and done it anyway, and then lost my fucking shit on it. So, but you were very good to me in the tour buses. You allowed the tour buses to get parked up at ArcTanGent, which was such a great experience. I mean, and the guys, all my mates that were on those tour buses. I mean, having to go to a festival and not be on them now is a bit like shit. This is the way we're doing it, you know. It was good. So I appreciate you doing that for us.
Pleasure.
In terms of you putting on these lineups now, your tastes have changed over the years. I look at the 2000 Trees bills. I looked at a couple of them a day. And I'm a bit like, shit, these bands sell 15,000 tickets and I barely know some of them. It's like that. I feel like in the last 10 years I've aged 40 years and I never realised I've got to become sort of granddaddy of metal. But I'm looking at these bills and I'm like, oh, fucking hell, I don't know a lot of these bands. Yet they must be massive because they're selling at your festival. Do you take a bit of effort to keep an interest in these bands that you don't necessarily, you don't sit and play these records? I mean, you're into Mastodon and the Mars Volta and Opeth. I mean, does it take you a bit of effort to stay motivated to book these bands and also to be clued up enough that you're not getting bumped in deals with a scene that you might not be as well aware of as you are with ArcTanGent?
I think it's definitely a challenge. I'm 42, so you know. It is a challenge to be booking lineups for 18 to 24-year-olds. So you have to accept that someone who's 22, who's 20 years younger than me, is coming at it from a different angle. Like I always think when like a band comes along and they're like the latest grunge band, and like for some people, it's hard to realise in your head that for some people that's the first time they've heard grunge, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds fresh and exciting. And for me, I'm going, for fuck's sake, another Nirvana clone. Great. That's not what the world needs. But so I'm not booking for me, though, am I? So I think I'm pretty clear in my head that 2000 Trees it is a festival that is aimed at its rock fans. And if what is popular rock music moves over the years, 2000 Trees will probably go with it. So what they're playing on the Radio 1 Rock Show or what is in Kerrang magazine or is in Rock Sound, that's where 2000 Trees will go. And those classic bands like At the Drive-In and Refused will always fit into that, and the Bronx. And, you know, this year, I think it's, in my opinion, the most credible lineup 2000 Trees has had for a long time. It's like, you know, bands like Jimmy Eat World and Thrice and the Menzingers. Absolutely great bands. You know, there's some of the more pop rock stuff that we've had over the years, which I don't really like or listen to. But I don't feel like that's necessarily where this year's lineup is. But as I say, you've got to you are running a business. So I'm booking what I think is a great lineup, but it's not all the sort of music I listen to. So it's a real challenge.
When you're talking about these bands as well, you get a lot of these bands that when you're looking at especially the old 2000 Trees lineup, they all become, obviously they don't all become, but you get a lot of bands in there in the smaller tents that have ended up in the headline tours and the arenas, and they're all, a lot of these bands are on the cusp, as you say. They're on the Radio 1 rock show. They're probably in the magazines like Rock's in it. Do you get a different atmosphere and a different sort of arrogance? Let's call it arrogance backstage when you're dealing with these bands that are up and coming and full of spunk, as opposed to the bands that you and I would deal with who play the likes of Damnation. I don't imagine a Godspeed You Black Emperor or Explosions in the Sky or fucking throwing stuff at the windies and in the dressing rooms at ArcTanGent. Is there a different vibe backstage at these events?
No, I don't think there is. I think when a band's small and growing, so we've had bands like Creeper who've gone on to big things, Nothing But Thieves, Slaves, bands, like fairly poppy rock bands, really. And if you're talking about Damnation and ArcTanGent, and a lot of the people that would be listening to this podcast probably would never want to listen to those bands. But those bands are just like anyone else. That when they're new, they're going, fucking hell, look what's happening to us. This is amazing. We never thought this was going to happen. This is great. We love it. And frankly, 2000 Trees is a great home for those bands, because that we have a really, just like at ArcTanGent, people want to watch music. So they want to watch Creeper before anyone's heard of Creeper. They're going to go and stand in a tent and watch them. So that means the bands start to love the festival. So actually when they come back, and I think Creeper's a really good example. They just had a top 5 album in the UK. They're playing second from top on the main stage at 2000 Trees underneath Jimmy Eat World. And they're like the nicest people I've ever met. And mostly my experience is that the bands are all really nice. The only thing I will say is that what bands that headline 2000 Trees and bands that headlined ArcTanGent, and the same with Damnation, they're not used to headlining festivals. So I do think their agents and their managers are like, right, we're headlining a festival, so we're going to ask for a bit more than we normally would. So like suddenly the production and the rider and the dressing rooms, they're like, we never would get this if we're halfway down at Download or Hellfest.
Yeah.
So you get ridden a little bit.
You absolutely do. You absolutely do. The thing is with Damnation is we kind of punch slightly above our weight. So we get some of these bands that come in and they also feel like, well, we're doing you. We're taking twice the money we're taking for the show last night and twice the money we're going to get for the show tomorrow night in our tour. But we're still doing you the favour by coming to your shitty little festival. So we also want all the fucking production, and we want all the rider, and that's I've kind of grown to love that side of it a wee bit, just because it's so it's so ridiculous. Now I booked 27 bands, and a wee bit of this podcast has been me just having to go agents, because they can be so difficult. And I had a chat with Dave from Anonatharak about that process of agents never just telling you what they want. So it becomes a slog that I find tedious. And he came back and said, well, maybe if you just said, this is what I'm going to pay, then you could save the slog. Maybe it's not the agent's fault, it's my fault, the promoter. And the reason I don't think that's the case is because I think the agent wants me to make a naive offer, wants me to pay several thousand more than what the band's actually worth. I book 27 bands, 30 bands in a year. You book 300 bands in a year. What's your general impression of the relationship with agents, albeit good ones and bad ones?
Well, it's tough, and I think a lot of people don't realise that there's no price list. So it is just like a complete guessing game. So and to the extent that you don't know if let's say a 2000 Trees headliner, if they were going to be 15 grand or 115 grand sometimes.
Yeah.
And because there's no price list, of course the agent, there's no such thing as a correct price actually.
No.
It's really what they ask for or what you offer or somewhere in the middle, or are they just trying to, because I mean one thing is a lot of agents or some agents, if they can mug you off and get you to pay way over, they will.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to think that when I'm paying over, I know I am. I know I'm paying over.
Like
I'm not. I don't think. yeah, like Refused. And but I think I know that I'm paying too much. So, but I'm doing it because I want that band at the festival, and I still believe it to be worth it. Whereas I know some festivals that have gone bust, have paid ridiculous money for bands that I'm not going to name names, but bands that I paid £30,000 to, I know another festival paid £120,000 to. So the band can obviously make it work for 30. Why are you paying 120? And that's why.
A quick aside to that. I mean, that was my understanding of temples. That bands that I'd booked for X amount, temples had paid twice or three times the amount. Now that guy might have thought that he was doing a noble thing, but there's no temples. So
I knew temples was coming up. I nearly sent you a text with a list of topics we couldn't talk about.
I'm happy not to talk about that, just because you.
No, I'm joking. But in terms of agents, I get on really well with lots of them. I think you're treading a really weird balance with agents. I think the one thing you always have to remember with a booking agent is that the thing that terrifies a booking agent more than anything else is losing their artist. And because there's no contracts between a band and an agent, it means the band can leave the agent tomorrow. So if the agent fucks up because the festival's done X, Y, Z, the agent loses the band. So that's the thing the agent cares about the most, is the band being happy. And that means if you fuck up, the person you thought you were good mates with, the booking agent, is no longer your mate.
Yeah.
And I had an agent rang me a couple of months ago, and the first two sentences only contain the words "fuck" and "fucking," and he was shouting at the top of his voice, and I was like, I thought we were friends. It's like, fucking hell.
What basically is my next point with that with the agents is, like, I hate the false anger. It's like, if you come to me and you think your band's 10 grand and I offer you 1 grand, it's just a conversation between you and I. I never posted it on Facebook. I never went on Twitter and said your band's worth fucking a pack of crisps. So when you come back and say, how dare you, do you know this band fucking headlined X event in America and we've been to Australia and sold 10 million? I was like, it's just a conversation between you and I. It's like, I've never had an agent say to me, oh, well, the band want 20 grand and I'm willing to pay 10, and then phoned me up and says, you fucking robbing bastard, how dare you ever. I always find that bizarre. It's like, who's got the time to... No one's insulted. Your entire job is to stop the band getting insulted. And my entire job is to sell tickets and make money. So, like, why? What's going on with that? Have you had that experience with some oversensitive agents?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I've had agents saying that they were going to blacklist me, and if you upset a booking agent and they're part of a company there's 6 other agents you deal with, and they've all got 15 bands, you don't want to be losing all of that. That's like half the 2000 Trees lineup with one agency. So yeah, I mean, it's quite scary because in some ways that my life is in their hands, but in the other sense, you put a lot of that. They make 10% of whatever you're paying. So if I'm spending hundreds of thousands a year on bands. There's 10% of that's going into all the agents' pockets. So there's some having a very nice little earner off just one small festival in the UK. So I don't know. It's an interesting balance, I think. Yeah,
and likewise, I mean, because we've got a mutual friend, Hayden, who we've booked a lot of his bands. He's got a fucking unbelievable roster with Amin Ra, Cult of Luna, Boris. You and I have fucking has 10% for you and I. He should take us for dinner, so he should. So
he's definitely watching this as well.
And he's a great guy. He is genuinely my favourite agent. He has got a great work ethic about him. He does what he needs to do for his bands, and I respect that. The same I respect managers, the same I respect tour managers. I just don't like that. Hayden's not the kind of guy who is going to spit his dummy out. He's just going to say that band's not going to play for that price and that's the end of it. And I always feel that that's the right way to approach it. The reason I even brought him up was because if you get a situation where I was looking to book Cult of Luna for maybe 4 or 5 years. I was looking to book Pig Destroyer for 5 or 6 years. And they had an agent who was either lazy, uninterested, wouldn't do the research and Damnation, whatever. And then they move agent and next week they're available when you book them. And you think, well, that clearly was not, I mean, Mogwai making an example of this. That was clearly nothing to do with the band. It's not like Cult of Luna or Pig Destroyer ever said, we don't want to play Damnation. They might have never even found it, and that's frustrating as well, when you know, like, God, all it took was them changing agent and suddenly they're available.
Yeah. I mean, he's brilliant because he's been to ArcTanGent as many times as I have, and he's probably been to Damnation as many times as you have.
Yeah.
So he knows those festivals. So some agents, you know, you deal with an agent in Europe that's never been to the festival, and you're trying to sell it to them. It's just another festival to them. Whereas Hayden's like, oh yeah, I know that 6 p.m. slot in whatever tent. That's a great slot. You know, this band would work perfect. He understands the festival so intimately that he knows it's a good place for his bands to be. I think. I've booked 15 of his bands for 2021, so he's going to be busy.
Good. And
I think I would really like. I mean, I know he's not going to thank me, but I would love to see you and him have a chat on here. I think it would be great.
That is, I'm doing well. I said I would do 10 episodes, like win, lose or draw. If no one tuned in, whatever, I was going to see it through and do 10 episodes. And Hayden is going to be episode 10, so that's what I was going to round up with. But the downloads are so fucking good, and the interest is so good. I feel like just not continuing it now is just for the sake of not continuing it. So what I might do, get Hayden on, do episode 10, then maybe just take a break or whatever it is, just to, because I can't, they're time consuming as fuck, these things. I mean, I thought, I'll come on here, I'll do a half an hour conversation with a friend or somebody that I want to shoot the shit with, knock it up onto YouTube or whatever, and the whole thing will take an hour or two most. It's several hours because I end up researching whoever I'm going to be speaking to, then I come and do this, and then it's an hour to send to the graphic designer, and then it's an hour to render it, and then I need to promote it afterwards. And I'm like, listen, so I've just gave myself another unpaid job. In fact, it actually cost me money because my web hosting fees for it are like $22 a month, and I bought a £35 mic. So it's actually cost me money.
You got to keep going now. I think there's I've listened to the Serena one, the one you did with Paul, the one with Vicky from Bloodstock, and the Luke one, and maybe one other. And Mr. Begley, I really enjoyed that one. So yeah, you got to keep it going. There's lots of people, lots of interesting people.
There is. And at the start as well, I kind of had a list of sort of 10. I mean, the only person that said no was Joe Bench from Bolt Thrower, and that wasn't a surprising no, to be honest, because they didn't do interviews when they were touring, so it was no surprise. And I just thought I'd reach out and see if you'd like to come on, and because they played that show at Damnation, it'd be great to get a sort of behind the scenes taking it. But everybody else has said yes. I mean, Hayden's been a bit. I mean, they're like, what's a booking agent got to gain from coming on? I mean, these guys are a bit, they're behind the curtains kind of guys. So like, he's in with the fabric at Damnation. So he's like, it'd be great to chat to him. I mean, I'm not going to try and throw the guy under the bus or anything. I just want to have a chat about. I feel like agents have taken a bit of kicking, and I feel like they're due to give promoters a bit of kicking back, because I'm doing all this very biased as a promoter and whatnot. So I'd like him to come on and maybe give me a bit of stick back. Production, you mentioned production. I've never been more jealous at any festival in the world than ArcTanGent last year with that fucking screen. That was a beautiful, beautiful thing, and you used it to its full advantage, and you let the rest of the bands play in it. So let's discuss the screen for a bit. How much did that cost? Can you say how much it cost to get that screen in for a weekend?
Yeah, it was £10,000. That was.
See, that's not bad. It's not bad because it was. I mean, it was. Am I right in thinking it was Carpenter Brute that needed it?
Yeah. So basically, it was like you can't book them unless you provide the screen.
Yeah.
And it's not some like, okay, we'll put up some shitty little projector. It was like an actual video wall made of millions and millions of like squares.
It was proper quality. I mean, you saw the Nordic. Well, obviously, when you saw the Carpenter Brute videos, but Nordic Giants videos on it as well. And then obviously Tom Begley. Did he harass the life at you about the specs for that tent?
Yeah, he was well excited for that, but it was great. I thought he did a brilliant job.
He did.
Good job.
That's it. That's taking advantage. So you've got the screen, $10,000 to get it there for the weekend. That saves. One of the biggest problems I have at Damnation is the production and people trying to get. There's no wings. There's no backstage. It's a fucking wall with windows in it. The truss is it's a mounted truss. You kind of get backdrop. The whole thing's a health and safety disaster, and because the venue are so strict, it becomes something that should be a very easy, almost any other festival wouldn't even be a consideration. It's very difficult at Damnation. So I'm looking at a screen thinking that's incredible. But what I thought might happen is the band that asked for it, sometimes these bands can be like, other bands aren't allowed to use the production. You bring in that fucking smoke machine, or you bring that projector, that's for our performance, we don't want other bands using it. I take it there was no issue with that, or you just said, look, I'm fucking paying for it?
Well, they never mentioned it, so I just I mean, frankly, if we couldn't have used it for everyone else, I wouldn't have booked them, because it took so long to build, and you can't just rip it out in 2 seconds flat. And it's 10 grand whether you have it for a day or 3 days. And so it was basically I didn't ask them. I just went ahead and just stuck as much stuff on it as we could. It was cool. I really liked it. I don't know if it'll be back in the future, because 10 grand.
It's an extra 10 grand onto the production budget. I mean, 10 grand still 10 grand at the end of the day. It just, with being so impressive, I thought, well, you know what, 10 grand to actually get into a site in Bristol or Fernhill Farm and put up's not terrible. And then because so many bands took advantage of it, and then just that classy, smooth production of boom, Zero Narder, boom, Nordic Giants videos, and then all of a sudden the press and the PR that you wouldn't even consider, that every time they're doing promo videos and everything is always going to show ArcTanGent. I mean, it would be ridiculous not to show ArcTanGent now. So then you're getting that. The tent obviously changed now. For someone from the outside looking in, would be a bit like, oh, that was a lovely big tent. It's disappeared and now a new one's there. But there was a lot more to that, wasn't there? I mean, the idea of not having, especially for the elements that unfortunately ArcTanGent seems to get, you could do a lot more with the new tent production-wise than you could do with the old tent.
Yeah, I mean, we outgrew that old tent. I mean, you could argue it's just not fit for purpose and never was in a way. When the weather's crazy, like when it's really windy and raining, it's not no one's dry. I remember watching Converge headline the festival, and I was stood by I was on the stage next to the monitor guy, and there's just like a stream of water coming down all over his desk, and he's like trying to divert it off, and I was looking at him and just feel like, I'm sorry, mate. I mean, whereas this new tent is, it's like being indoors, really. It's you're very protected from the weather. And unfortunately, in the UK, and as you pointed out at ArcTanGent, it's it's got potential to rain.
No, I wouldn't, if it was just like, oh, how bad is it that it rains at your festivals? I mean, I wouldn't even put you through that question one more time. But from an organiser and promoter side of thing, and the guy who's putting costs, that costs you tens of thousands of pounds, and has done now. It's not just some fucking puddles or people needing to bring wellies. The money involved in cleaning up those fields afterwards is substantial, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like the vehicles that you have to hire to run a festival when there's mud. The 4x4s for towing people in the car park, and all the telehandlers and like heavy machinery to be able to, and actually the trackway is like mega expensive, like the metal trackway. We never have enough, never have anywhere near enough, because it's just really expensive. So yeah. I mean 2000 Trees has been dry for like 7 years in a row now, and I have to say, running a festival in the dry is an absolute piece of piss when you've done it for long enough. But it's not easy when it's raining.
No, and I was at the 2000 Trees, I think it might have been 2012, 65 Days of Static headline. That wasn't just bad, I mean, that was biblical. And that was, did you tell me one time that there was hourly meetings just about you guys try to keep that site safe?
Yeah, and just like we're having arguments about whether we're going to close it or not. I mean, it was bad. Like that was the sort of rain. I mean, I've now run 20 odd festivals over the last 15 years, and we've never closed one, cancelled one. I don't think I've ever even had to bump a band off, but that was 2012, 2000 Trees was as close as it got. I mean, there's like rivers of mud and water just flowing through the site, and you've got generators sat on the grass with water and mud just pouring past them.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to be an electrician to work out that that's not really, it's not ideal.
And at that point, because obviously you were a pretty professional outfit by that point, so did you have the experts on site as well? Like, this is what we need to do to keep this. I mean, was it just patchwork trying to keep that festival going that weekend?
Yes, it was. And you've got the experts there, but actually, no one's ever been. You know, there can't have been many festivals that were as bad as that ever. It's just, it was so bad. Yeah. Like, it makes every ArcTanGent look like Hawaii, doesn't it? It's like, it was so bad.
Yeah.
So they had no experience of dealing with that level of water.
Yeah, I mean, I know what happens if you pour water into a generator, but they don't expect to see it in that level.
Yeah.
Listen, you guys, do you feel that that shitty run of luck you've had with the weather at ArcTanGent, do you feel that ArcTanGent would be, the capacity would be so much more now if you'd had a run of 4 or 5 years where it gets, I mean, it's one of those ones where it's absolutely no one's fault if it rains. I mean, nobody in Glastonbury can't stop it fucking raining in their site, and they certainly can't manage stop the place from turning into a shit show any better than you guys could at 2,000 Trees in 2012. But do you feel a wee bit that could like you'd have an extra 5,000 fans coming if they'd all came and all been blessed with sunshine weather every year?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's this thing in the festival industry that people say that if you have a bad year of weather, you always have bad sales the year after. I don't really know if it's true. It certainly was true for 2,000 Trees in 2012 to 13. We had a bad year in 2013. I think most people are like, I'm never going to a festival ever again after that. ArcTanGent, I mean, it's grown. Like the last time, 2019 was like much better sales than we'd ever had. So would we be bigger? I guess we probably would. The annoying thing is, I've sat at that farm so many times in the sunshine.
Yeah.
You know, we've done the whole setup, and we're all like on the Tuesday night. There was one year, I don't know what year it was, but we all sat out on the grass drinking beers on the Tuesday, thinking this is lovely. The grass is green, it's dry, sun's out, and like the festival opens a day and a half later, and it's just absolute carnage. So you know, there will be sunny years at ArcTanGent. It's not like it's tempting to think the sun will never shine there, but it does.
Well, if that's what people say about festivals when it is wet and people don't come back and you lose sales, I suppose it says everything about ArcTanGent that these have continued to grow while it's been a pretty terrible run in the weather. And ArcTanGent's one of those events as well. You probably learn so much for 2,000 Trees. You do have the track down. Your tents are better. They are indoors. You can have a really shitty weather ArcTanGent and still be relatively dry and have a really good day. I certainly have, and the pints of White Russian certainly help.
Yeah, look, I've been to plenty of wet festivals over the years, and I think in some ways you enjoy it more. Like the sunshine can be quite sapping of your energy.
Yeah.
Whereas
it's too
when
hot.
it's wet, you've got no choice when it's wet than to get yourself a beer and go and watch a band. Yeah. You basically do what you're supposed to do at a festival. Whereas when it's sunny, everyone's a bit like lazing around on the grass, which I'm not really sure. When I've spent all year booking a lineup, I don't really want to see everyone lying outside a tent when there's a band on. Yeah. But the good thing about rain is it'll get them in the tent.
How personally, I take the opening band and the crowds that appear for the opening band at any of the 4 stages at Damnation quite personally. I mean, I go and I check and I see who's went there, and fortunately they've always been pretty busy. Damnation fans are great for that. I think there's a bit of, we've never had any buy-ons, or we've never just put on shitey tour support, so people trust if there's a band opening the stage they might not know, the chances are they'll be pretty good. So there's a bit of that, and then there's Damnation fans being a good fan base who give a shit about their metal as well. But I care about the amount of people that are in there for the fourth stage when it opens. Do you feel the same as a guy who literally books that band and puts them there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a bit of my job that I really love. So, you know, finding the bands and discovering something new. And particularly at ArcTanGent, where it's the music I listen to. When I I'm not saying I'm discovering the band, that they're not unheard of, but when they're really small and most of the audience haven't heard of them, it's really exciting to be like, wow, this band's amazing. And then you put them on, and then because music starts at 11 a.m. at ArcTanGent, and there'll be 1,000 people at 11 a.m. and you're like, yeah, I mean, that's good. That's amazing, really. There's more people watching bands at 11 a.m. at ArcTanGent than there would be at Download, and they've got like 10 times the number of people.
Yeah.
That makes me feel really... I love the ArcTanGent audience, and I don't mean that in a cheesy way, but their commitment to watching music is incredible. And that they will basically run from stage to stage for 12 hours.
Yeah, and that's good. And there's always that that compliment. It's also difficult, like when you get to clash, when somebody's calling you an absolute bastard for bands clashing. It's like, you're doing your job, unless you're putting a doom band with a doom band, and then you're just a dick. But if you get a post rock band and a death metal band clashing, and people say, "Oh, that's a bad clash," you've done a right good job at what you're trying to do. So that's good. So let's talk a wee bit about bands then. We'll sort of round this off with a bunch of things about bands then. So let's problematic bands. I don't know if you did hear the podcast with me, Paul. We had Puscifer, the Polish black metal band. They were absolute fucking assholes for the whole day, and then they end up splitting up properly anyway because they were assholes. So tell me, share some experiences of who's been the worst band that you just like, they fuckers are not coming back, man.
Well, fucking hell. I mean, the thing is, I know them now. You know what I'm going to say, don't you?
If you're going to say Dragged Into Sunlight, I'm surprised at that, because Dragged Into Sunlight are difficult. Like, they are difficult, but I've kind of accepted that. And they're difficult now. They're difficult and they want weird things. They're not difficult and like they don't bust your, or maybe they did bust your balls today, but
no, they busted my balls massively. the best thing about you probably don't remember this because it was at Damnation, but me and you we were backstage at Damnation, standing in the corridor having a chat, and the guy from Dragged Into Sunlight walked past, and you were like, "Hey, come over here. You owe James an apology." It was just one of those things. They were they were a massive nightmare. He had my mobile number. He was busting my balls massively. But we know each other now, and it's all fine. But yeah, that was in year one at ArcTanGent. I think that was on the Damnation stage, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. It's your fault, really.
So people think that people often I hear in interviews saying to you about the lineup and how it's become. You started as this like exclusively post rock festival, and the reason I've always found that a bit weird because that had one of the heaviest team. You had Winterfell and Dragged Into Sunlight and Manatees. I mean, there's a fucking heavy lineup you had in one of those stages.
Yeah, it's annoying that people think it's got heavy and it used to be math rock, because it's just not true, is it? Although, maybe it is a bit heavier now than it was. I don't know. I definitely think that the audience is much more there for heavy bands. So essentially, I don't want to make it all about money, but I just told you we didn't make any money for 5 years, and it takes me all year to run it. So you have to find a way of getting a few more people to come through the door. And, the answer to that solution, like it or not, is Meshuggah and Opeth and, bands like that. And there aren't any math rock bands, and there are very few post-rock bands that fit the bill on that.
Well, who are you left with? People mention in Scotland they're called Sigur Rós, and I noticed when you guys were having the conversation it's Sigur Rós. So I'm a bit like, is that an ArcTanGent band? I never thought it was, to be honest. And if you take them out of the equation, then who's actually left in the post-rock? I mean, you've had Godspeed You Black Emperor.
It's just Mogwai, isn't it?
This guy's just Mogwai.
Yeah, Mogwai and Sigur Rós maybe. I mean, I think their audience would actually be quite different to our audience. So whether or not it would work, I don't know. But yeah, that's it. Post-rock, math rock. I don't think there are any really that we haven't had. Apart from bands that have broken up, maybe. So you're like, okay, the festival started as a left of centre, left field. By that I mean weird.
Yeah.
So I would book a death metal band, but only if they were. In fact, that you'll see next week, I have booked a death metal band. fuck it, Rivers of Nihil.
Really?
Rivers of Nihil. Do you know them?
Aye.
You know, but they're weird. I definitely shouldn't have said that, but fuck it. And I will book an electronic band as long as they're weird, and I'll book any bands as long as they're left to centre. That was the ethos for ArcTanGent.
Yeah.
It's not like it has to be math rock and post rock. It's not at all. And unfortunately, I feel like we've been through all those bands, and some of them will keep coming back. But I'm not just going to repeat the same lineup year after year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a struggle even for. I mean, like you need to get through a hell of a lot of bands. I mean, yeah, I've only got the 30, and I feel like right, okay, try to dodge some of these bands that I've been about, because you need more bands. It seems like in the 2000 trees and that rock audience, a lot of these bands come up and they replace. Like you can get a Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes. They can come out of nowhere, and then with that's again a band I could see headlining a 2000 trees now. Whereas well, Damnation and ArcTanGent, when you started that and when I started Damnation, the same bands are the same bands that could still headline. So you're really trying to squeeze out a new looking lineup from a small pool of bands, which is difficult.
Yeah, you're very right there. That there aren't bands shooting up and getting much bigger really really quickly. So yeah, you really are. So to that extent, you've got to be a bit creative, and I think there are still big bands in that kind of left of centre heavy world that we haven't had, like Asleep or even Sun maybe would work. Neurosis,
yeah.
You know, and obviously the Mars Volta and Mogwai, but you know, it feels like there's a bigger pool of bands if you go for heavier stuff. I mean, did you say on one of the podcasts that Neurosis was your, yeah, because it's pretty much, I mean, it's in my top 5 bands that ArcTanGent hasn't booked.
It's not so much that, I mean, the bands for me, it's weird because my favourite bands aren't bands who could headline Damnation, or certainly couldn't beforehand, like Cult of Luna, Amun Ra. I mean, I brought Amun Ra to the UK in 2012 and they played what's now the 4th stage. You know,
I saw it. It was amazing.
And where are you going in? It's like Cult of Luna. I mean, would you like Christmas? And that is as good as it was going to get with Cult of Luna. It was still 2 from the top. So I've booked my favourite bands. I mean, for me, my next, if you're talking about my absolute favourite, Tool, 9 Inch Nails, A Perfect Circle, Deftones, they're not going to play Damnation. So I've booked everybody that I can book, and it's not that I'm trying to look to get all my favourite bands to headline anyway, but I'm kind of stuck with, you're right, it'd be good to see. There's been a few bands that have kind of came up in the metal scene, Ghost, Gojira, they kind of bands that have become headline bands, but they're few and far between. And sometimes they go up so quickly that you don't even get the chance. Like Gojira and Ghost are too big for Damnation now as well. So you're a bit like, fuck, this is you're kind of like back to the drawing board. And then you get some random bands like Emperor. Now, Emperor are too expensive for Damnation, but I would argue that, I mean, they could headline Damnation, but it wouldn't. I don't know if they'd sell more tickets than Opeth. And then you're like, that's a bit of a risk. I'm starting to pay fucking silly money for something that's not going to sell as many tickets as the band I've just had. So well, hopefully we can get back to that problem of actually putting on events and looking for these bands.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge. I think people don't realise that you never really know if you've booked. Like, if you look at some of the headliners we've had at ArcTanGent, you never really know if they're the right band you booked. We had Shellac, we had Glassjaw, and then on the other hand, you got Meshuggah, Opeth, and then there's like Battles, and they're all very different bands with different fans, and you're not really sure what's going to work until you've done it. And then even after you still don't really know what sold you or what didn't sell you tickets. Was it the weather? Was it the headliner? Or,
was it the festival itself? You know, people coming back. I mean, I know a lot of folk are going to come down to ArcTanGent before you announce a band. So is it just because folk have gotten into the tradition of doing it as well? So those are the good fans. So I asked you about difficult bands, right? We'll let Dragged Into Sunlight wear that dunce hat, and they're just going to have to learn to be better in future. But let's also be positive. Now, when you book a smaller band, you referred to it earlier with 2000 Trees, some of these bands show up and they're just fucking delighted to be there, especially festivals like 2000 Trees and ArcTanGent and the crowds that they're going to get. So you expect them to be I don't want to say the word grateful, but grateful. But when you get the bigger bands who don't feel that way, they've been paid top dollar and they come, usually they're tough work. So when you get a band, my example is Bolt Thrower, when they show up and they're just fucking down to earth, cracking guys who cause you no grief, and they're just like your mates for the second they come through the door. It's such a joy. So give me an example of a band, like a big band you've worked with that have been absolute legends for the minute they've showed up on site.
I mean, Cedric from At the Drive-In and the Mars Volta, when they headlined 2000 Trees, and I was lucky enough that I've got a friend of a friend who was a school friend of theirs. So when they came to London, she took us to the show and we went and met them, and we went into the dressing room, had a chat. So I'd already met them when they came to 2000 Trees. But I was thinking, I mean, I'm like a mega fan, really, of both of their bands. And I was thinking, he won't know who I am. But Cedric he did, and he was just the nicest guy. And he hung out at 2000 Trees all day, just like chilling out. You know, you'd walk past and he'd be sat in the sunshine reading a book, and then he'd have a little chat with you. And honestly, Cedric from At the Drive-In is the nicest guy.
That's good to hear, because they don't have that reputation, you know, because they give the speech on stage about don't fucking mosh and don't crowd surf, and people can get a bit arsey with that. So that's good to. I love this podcast when I hear about bands like Luke mentions Nickelback, the last one. Like, they were just fucking gentlemen to the support bands, to the crew. They were just cracking guys, when everybody's got this perception of them being these stuck up Canadians that are fucking right shite music. So that's good. I'm delighted to hear that. The Drive-In were absolutely spot on. Anyone else that you want to give a shout out to for being absolute legends?
I mean, this is not very Damnation or ArcTanGent focused, but yeah, you know, Creeper, I always think are really, really nice guys. And I love the fact that they've had a top 5 album. And you know, are you a fan of the band Black Peaks?
No, I don't dislike them. I've come to see them at your events. I think I saw them with Bosk play. They're one of those bands that, like, what's the other band that I would put in that category that I like, without getting overly excited about? OMS. Like, they're just a good band that I don't go and download their music or anything, but at the same time happy to book them or happy to watch them if they're at a festival. So
I feel like they're like the UK's answer to like Faith No More crossed with Tool, crossed with Deftones, you know, crossed with Mastodon. They're fucking, they're just so good and the nicest people in the world. So yeah, I love them. But in terms of big bands, I like I said, I try and, unless it's an At the Drive-In, I try and avoid them.
Keep away.
Because I couldn't avoid At the Drive-In because I was like, this is like the 20-year-old me wouldn't believe it was happening, so I've got to go and speak. But
absolutely,
the rest of them I avoid like the plague and stand out front and have a beer with my mates.
Yeah, when it gets to the end, I see you at these festivals, and you take the time to enjoy it. You're at the bars and you soak up the festival you've taken all year to organise. But I'm always very happy to see Damnation end, just because, not because I hated Damnation as such, but anything that could have went wrong can no longer go wrong. And that, no matter how much I enjoy a Damnation, there's a pit in my stomach where you're only one fire alarm away, you're only one fight in the corridor, you're only one fucking power cut away from what you've worked all year taking a sour turn. So do you feel the same when you get to the end of your festivals? Like, thank fuck it just went well?
Yes, a bit, but also I feel sad that it's over. And I think probably over the years, I've got more and more people working in the roles that I would have been doing previously are now not done by me. So, like, I don't think there's a band problem on the planet that my team can't solve without me. And they know now actually that I don't want to be asked the question. If you don't answer questions for a period of about 5 years, they eventually stop asking you and they just make it up themselves. There's like, I've got such brilliant people working in artist liaison and stage management and production and stuff that it all just happens without me. So often there's bad shit happens that I don't even know about. And we've had there's been some stuff that you can't avoid, like a power cut. Now on the main stage, and that is horrible. But I feel like I've got myself to the place now where I know mostly it's going to be okay. We've done 20 festivals; they always happen.
Yeah.
And even when it's raining, I mean, Simon, my business partner at ArcTanGent, and he's like one of my best friends, hates me because it'll be raining and I'll see him at the end of the night and I'll be like, "Did you see Meshuggah? It was amazing." And he's in the car park towing cars out, and like knee deep in mud, pushing cars out, and I'm oblivious to it.
Yeah,
drinking a beer, watching Meshuggah from the best seat in the house, and but I just think you've spent all year like booking the lineup. You've got to watch it. And it's only 3 days. You've got to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even more on your side of things. I mean, you're investing everything into that. I mean, I don't like to call Damnation a hobby, but I mean, it's like it doesn't consume as a fraction of my life as it would be for doing 2 major festivals like yourself, regardless of the size of your team, just how many people you need to book. I'll quickly just touch on a couple of other things with bands, and then we'll wrap this up. It's been an absolute pleasure, big man. We mentioned about post-rock bands and not really filling the headline slots and bands. How do you feel that Maybeshewill, to me, are arguably, if not the best post-rock band going, up there at the very top? They couldn't make it work financially or successfully or however it was supposed to be, and then for them to become the next Explosions in the Sky or whatever. But you, God, I hope you've got them back for next year. You're supposed to have them this year. What's your thoughts on those guys? Were you gutted that they couldn't make it to be that band, to be a Godspeed You Black Emperor and Explosions in the Sky, that kind of level?
Yeah, I think it's so hard if you sound like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference between Maybeshewill and Explosions in the Sky is, why it took off for one. I mean, it's not for the want of like touring and effort, is it? Because they did some massive long tours. They did that tour through.
I actually thought you were going to say not for the want of trying there on some sort of cheesy pun.
I stopped myself. There's an in-joke for you if ever you heard one. But yeah, they put in the hard yards, but it never fully took off. And I think, but they're more of a festival band than they are a headline band, because if you put them in the right place, and that place is like, well, there's no better place than the ArcTanGent, I don't think, they will pack, that tent that they were going to play in 2020 is like 3,500, and they'll pack it out, no doubt, 100%, and it will be great. Yeah. And the one thing I love about them above most other post-rock bands is they're brilliant live, and they're really good to watch, and they something about the way they move with the music is great, whereas a lot of post-rock is quite shoegazy and stare at your feet and play your songs.
They can be very static on stage. Maybe they're just such a fucking great band. I mean, I've seen them at all levels, for like pubs to as you say, some of your stages that have been absolutely packed. Another one, I'm on the t-shirt at the minute, the Nordic Giants, and that's not to say, as we said with Paul's, not to say that they won't go on and become Sigur Rós, but at the time when I first saw them at ArcTanGent, I was like, shit, I got to see this band in this tent. I mean, these guys going to be doing 2,000 capacity events soon, because it was so stunning. And again, I mean, they've done well for themselves, but I mean, in terms of post-rock, they've done really well, but it's not blown up for them in the 7 years that they've been around.
No, and it felt like they had like proper crossover potential, because I booked them for 2,000 Trees as well, and everyone asked me, all my friends and family are like, who should we watch? And I'm like, Nordic Giants, because you could show them to anyone. You take your grandmother in, you could take your 5-year-old daughter in, and it's like really, it's just an amazing experience to watch Nordic Giants. I don't know, if I was speculating, I'd say it's hard for them to repeat that feat twice. Your best Nordic Giants show is always your first one, I think. Because it's like, oh man, it's mind-blowing. Like, anyone listening to this who hasn't seen Nordic Giants, go and see them. It's just unbelievable. And then the problem, I think, you paint yourself into a corner when you're very visuals based, is whether or not you're supposed to sit at home and listen to Nordic Giants or not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I guess you are. They release albums, but it's tricky. I think it's still early days for them in a way. They've got loads of other stuff going on, haven't they? They're like loads of other film. They do film stuff and all sorts.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I mention them as a compliment. Listen, I love Nordic Giants. This two posters behind me here as well are shows I've put on in Glasgow. This is not a slight on Nordic Giants or saying that they haven't fulfilled their potential. Just they were so good when you first see them, and they shows that you just expect that everybody's going to feel like you feel, and if everybody feels like you feel, then they'll easily sell 2,000 tickets to the next event, which clearly, as you say, is not the case. And you're right, when you're listening, Nordic Giants are excellent on record, but it's not the same experience where you can listen to Maybeshewill on Spotify and be like, fucking hell, that seems almost not as incredible as it is live, but it's still absolutely brilliant. So that's that. If those bands had been what they had the potential to be, then there's your headline slot straight away for the likes of, and then you could pick out 15, 20 metal bands, death metal bands, where you could say the same for Damnation. You know, if they'd moved on to the next level, then they could have been the headliner, and then we wouldn't have Orange Goblin, for example. If they'd really taken off, then they could headline Damnation, or the Anunnathrach could headline Damnation, which would be great. I'd love that. I don't want to be scratching around Europe or America trying to find a headliner that's going to sell the tickets in England. You know what I mean? Talking about headliners and one band that the ATG TV actually left me with to ask you about, Electric Wizard. Is that how do they fit into the ArcTanGent bubble?
Well, I mean, I'm a fan. Like I buy every album they release actually, and I really like them. I'm never quite sure if it's they're definitely they're always on my list. And do you know what? You know that you said that thing earlier on about when you know the booking agents. If Hayden looked after Electric Wizard, they'd have probably played ArcTanGent 3 times already, wouldn't they?
Yes.
At double the price. But I don't know their agent. I don't even know if they've got an agent. I don't know who it is. I think it would work, but I don't know if the ArcTanGent audience would go mad for it. I mean, you tell me. You probably know as well as I do in a way. I watched them at Damnation and thought they were great.
Yeah, I mean, they are great. They do have an agent, Mark Lewis, the same agent as Anunnathrach, actually, as it is, and it's weird. They do have an affinity with Damnation. We were the first festival in the UK to really give them that respect, to give them the headline slot, and I feel that they've got a soft spot for Damnation, why they've played it 3 times, and they've been fair with their fees for Damnation as well. But just like, but then Vicky said the exact same thing for Bloodstock, and hers, like she feels like she was stalking them for a while, and they're just one of those bands that they've got a touch of the bolt thrower about them, or maybe Mogwai, that it really needs to tick all their boxes for them to say yes. But I still think the thing is, Electric Wizard aren't cheap. So it's not a band you can just take a punt on. You gotta just go like, let's see if the ArcTanGent fans like them, and they're like, shit, that was a lot of money to spend on an empty tent. But saying that, I've never seen Electric Wizard play live and it been anything less than packed anywhere it's been. So I'm sure the ArcTanGent lineup would take me. Like, let's finish on the 3 bands, sort of dream bands. I would go for headline both your festivals. So ArcTanGent. Let's stick with Opeth since they're already been announced. Mogwai for the reasons we've already said. And people were talking about your other interview. We were mentioning like Biffy Clyro and Deftones, and I don't think that's realistic. I think those bands are definitely the next level up in terms of cost and the festivals they play, like headlining fucking Hellfest. But Puscifer, do you ever listen to Puscifer?
Yeah.
What's that fucking smile? I swear to God, if you've booked Puscifer.
No. Do you know what? I haven't. I mean, I think that album... So I thought Puscifer was a joke band originally. And it's a comic... It's got comedic elements, but it's not a joke band. So I ignored them at the start. And then I bought... what's it called? Money Shot or something the album's called. Bought that. I think it came out in 2015 maybe. And that album is fucking amazing. They've got a new album coming out this year. I'm well excited for them. Do you know what their live show is though?
Yeah, so I done the exact same as you. I thought it was a joke band. and I'd heard a track 6 or 7 years ago, and it was terrible. It was like Menard just fucking around. You know what I mean? I love Tool and I love A Perfect Circle. And I heard this one track and it was rubbish. It was absolute rubbish. So I was at Hellfest maybe, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, and Black Sabbath were playing. And we were watching Black Sabbath, and it was like, Black Sabbath are either excellent or they're shit. And it was definitely one of the shit nights. And our options were Paradise Lost again or checking out Puscifer. And we went across, and I swear to God, I was blown away. It was probably the best set of the festival. And the production couldn't even fit on one. They had a boxing ring, and they had 2 wrestlers.
Yeah.
Wrestling. I think what's supposed to happen is the full ring's supposed to get built, but they weren't able to do that because of for the stage space. So the wrestlers were kind of on stage, and it was brilliant. It was like watching a really quirky Tool show. Obviously, he's an amazing frontman, and I was like, "Fucking hell, this is unreal." I'm so glad that I came. And now they're playing the main stage at Hellfest next year underneath Faith No More. So they're clearly. I mean, they're not playing the 4th stage, so I take it they're going to take that production again. So, had you ever asked? Is that why you're mentioning production?
Yeah. I've had conversations about it, but it came. I actually had a conversation about it either for 2020 or for 2021. I can't remember. Must have been 2020, but it was like they're bringing. He was like, "Here's a photo of what the stage looks like. You have to give them this." And it's like a fucking full-size wrestling ring. You know, at the end of the day, you know how stressful band changeovers are. You're not going to do it in an hour, are you? At a small festival, at Download or somewhere, or Hellfest, that'll be built backstage and probably rolled in on some crazy. They'll have it all set up and the stage will rotate or whatever. But at ArcTanGent, all right, guys, you got an hour and you got to build a wrestling ring and all their other shit, and I just don't think that's. I think that's another step beyond.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose anything he touches is going to be like that. I mean, you could sit here and be A Perfect Circle as well, but I was told that A Perfect Circle is free. Even Download were bulking it. The idea that A Perfect Circle playing there. So I think anything that guy's involved in comes with some significant dosh behind it. So.
He's a busy man, I think. I just read his book. His book's brilliant.
Is it?
Really, really good. And he's like the busiest person in the universe. He's one of those people he doesn't sit down at night and watch Netflix. I don't think he ever sits down. He's just busy.
I know. I mean, the idea that something like you had a Chino Marino or a Menard up in your stage. I mean, that's a fucking. You talk about your moment where you're saying, is this really happening? That would be. I always thought, not that anything was ever done this, but when Trent Reznor done How to Destroy Angels, I thought if there was ever, did you ever hear that project that he done with it was excellent, and I thought if he'd come across and toured the UK, that'd have been an opportunity where Damnation could maybe have got a How to Destroy Angels, just a sort of with him being so fresh. Yeah. But that would be, imagine seeing Trent Reznor on your stage. Like, fucking, I don't get starstruck with bands. I never grew up listening to these bands, so I'm not like oh my God, but I think a Trent Reznor or a Chino or a fucking Menard, I'd be like, I think I'd have to take a second take.
Yeah. I mean, what I said earlier on about, I feel like if you could get Mogwai to see the festival, they'd probably want to be involved. Yeah. I really feel that, and this, I don't want to sound like I'm overstating how great ArcTanGent is, but I do feel like if Chino Moreno or Mike Patton saw ArcTanGent and came and saw the audience we have and how dedicated they are, not how great the festival is, how great the audience is, Patton would want to be involved and get his Ipecac label and bands, of which we've had loads over the years. And I feel like Chino Moreno, if you look at the bands he takes out with Deftones, didn't they have 3 Trapped Tigers supporting them? He'd love it. So I feel like you can't book Deftones and you can't book Faith No More.
Yeah.
But if we kidnap them and showed them the festival, they'd probably want to do it. I don't know. Maybe I'm being.
You know what? It's nice to have that. Do you know when I first get started as well? We were a wee bit like that. We'd send these emails out to these bands that were too big to play in, especially Damnation back in the day. And it's nice to think there's still a wee bit of that in these folk. And sometimes you get examples of it. You hear about these bands that just show up and do the random small events that they've got no right to be at. So who knows? Best of luck. If you ever book Puscifer, that would be absolutely incredible. And likewise for your other event, the 3 bands. So Manchester Orchestra, I'd love to see Manchester Orchestra at 2,000 Trees. Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes that I mentioned there, I think he's at that level now that he could probably finish the stage. And these guys are too big, but I thought if you saved enough money in the other 2 bands, and Pixies are a weird. I mean, they're one of those bands that they do show up at these quirky wee festivals. And they are that kind of, if you just struck it lucky, I thought you could potentially get Pixies.
Yeah, I mean, all 3 of those I've had conversations on. I email Manchester Orchestra's agent. She gets really pissed off with me because I email about once every 4 or 5 months. Just going, are they, just so I don't miss it. I really want them.
You know what's weird about that, James? It's like we can sit here and we can say about trying to get a Puscifer or a Pixies and really like hitting the home run. Manchester Orchestra are not a home run for 2,000 Trees. I mean, Manchester Orchestra, they play 900 cap venues. When they played Leeds and Reading, I went to see them, they were in that wee terrible 4th stage playing to, 1,000 people. For those guys to come across and play 2,000 Trees would be a result for them, not necessarily a result for you.
No, although the problem is, if they were a home run, I could just pay loads of money and then they'd come.
Yeah.
But because they're not, I'm not going to pay loads of money. So it has to be, they're over in Europe, they're doing a tour and they route it and 2,000 Trees works. So that's the only time that will work, I think. But yeah, Frank Carter's played before and I would love to come back. And Pixies would be, Pixies would be awesome.
It would be. It would be. And next time, at the end of the day, I don't... Sometimes I like not to be that guy that's talking and starts mentioning a band that someone else knows is 200 grand and then compare them to a band that's like 60 grand and I'm talking like I know, but I thought Pixies on tour would have been all that much more expensive than at the drive-in, say, like try to get one of those things. So it's one of the ones that's more on the unrealistic side of things, but it would be realistic enough that if you won the lottery, you could have them on. Sorry. I
mean, they I think they were playing because Pearl Jam did a show in London last year that got cancelled for COVID, or this year, sorry. But that was the same weekend as 2003. So Pixies were actually in the UK. So I did have that conversation, like, hey, I run a festival that weekend. You're already here. But,
come and play. That would have been. And just this is the final thing. I again, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. It's been great to do this whole promoter versus promoter thing that I've done with Vicky. You've been great, mate. You guys, this might not have been something that was on your radar, but it was a London or a UK Death Fest that started up, and it was going to clash the exact same weekend as ArcTanGent. And this is one of these things that I was saying to you about, or you were saying to me about the styles and still. When people like their music, they like their music. So I was having a conversation with friends who were going to go and check out and see what this UK Death Fest was about when they might have otherwise came to ArcTanGent. So was that, you're nodding, so was that on your radar and you're a bit like, fuck, this is the last thing we need, is more events popping up?
I just think I think people are bonkers. Like when I start a festival, the first thing I do is look at the calendar. Yeah. Like, I just don't understand, like amplified festivals, that, it's like it's in Gloucestershire.
Yes.
They ended up clashing with ArcTanGent and UK Death Fest. I'm just like, these people are bonkers. Like even if it's only 100 people or 50 people, why would you choose a different weekend?
Yeah.
It's hard to sell. It's hard to sell festival tickets, and you don't want to all be on the same weekend. Like. Just because you like ArcTanGent doesn't mean you don't also listen to the music that you would get at UK Death Fest. Like
absolutely,
and you included. So it's like
To be fair, I think that the guys are in for a wee bit of a rude awakening coming to the UK because the lineup wasn't good, and I think they kind of come across like, we do this in America, and this is what it takes to sell these tickets. Their tickets weren't cheap. I mean, it was like twice the price of Damnation for a fraction of the lineup. I mean, I was quite shocked at how poor the lineup was for how much they were looking for, despite it being in London. And I was like, maybe the only festival that won from COVID-19 was UK Death Fest, because I don't know if that was going to, I don't know if that was going to be great for them. So, On that note, is there anything else you'd like to add before I leave you, James?
No, I mean, it's been really, really fun. Really fun chatting. So thanks for having me. And well, the only thing I'd like to add is don't stop at 10 episodes. Make sure you get Hayden and then keep going.
Hayden, and then, well, I've got the campaign was to get you. You're here. Then the campaign's to get Hayden. He's next, and then Cam Hack for download. I need to get him. He's dodging it. He's using the protection of Live Nation of dodging it. But we'll see. I've managed you and I've managed Hayden. So I appreciate you watching them, listening, and the support for it. I absolutely love your festival, mate. I will be back down when it's ready to go, and we will drink more of this utterly terrible fucking drink. See you after, pal.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.